بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون أياما معدودات فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين فمن تطوع خيرا فهو خير له وأن تصوموا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون صدق الله العظيم. We begin by praising Allah Azza wa Jalla and seeking Allah's blessings upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his companions and all of the believers. Dear respected brothers and sisters, inshallah, in this brief session we're going to be covering a very important topic, which is the fiqh of fasting. There are many details connected with the month of Ramadan that we're not going to be speaking about today because they're more to do with the spiritual aspects of fasting. But today's session is going to be concerned with the jurisprudence and the fiqh of fasting. What are the conditions that obligate fasting? Under which conditions is fasting not necessary? What are the things that a person's permitted to do during the fast? What things break the fast? So on and so forth. And the aim is to also touch upon some of the more contemporary conditions that we have, such as travel and also medical conditions and medical procedures that people need to undergo on a regular basis, testing, etc. How does that affect the fast? So we're going to be focused mostly on the jurisprudence, inshallah, and nothing more than that. So when we speak about fasting, there's a discussion about the history of the fast, when it came about, how it came about, which year was it obligated in, did previous nations fast or not, what was the nature of their fast. Because Allah does say in the Quran, O believers, fasting has been made mandatory upon you as it was made on those before you. كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ, which highlights a very important discussion, but it's not within the scope of today's lesson, so we're going to move past that discussion, inshallah. When we do speak about Sawm and fasting in the Islamic tradition, the most basic understanding is that Sawm is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned that Islam is based on 5. Of them, Shahada is 1, Salah is the 2nd, Zakah is the 3rd, or you can say Sawm is the 3rd, Zakah is the 4th, and Hajj is the 5th. Whichever order you want to put them in, but because Shahada is the basis, we always say Shahada first. Salah, because of its regular occurrence, always comes second. Fasting is more than charity because more people are obligated to fast than those who are obligated to give Zakah, because Zakah requires a person having wealth, so on and so forth. And Zakah occurs once a year, whereas Ramadan fasting is 30 days of the year. And then of course Hajj is once in a person's lifetime. Sawm and fasting has a linguistic definition or understanding and a technical Shari'i legal definition. So the definition of fasting, the word Sama yasumu sawman, would mean to refrain from something. Anything that would be considered Sawm linguistically. But technically, when we speak about Sawm in Sharia, in Fiqh, in Islamic jurisprudence, Sawm means to abstain from food, drink, and conjugal relations or sexual relations with one's spouse from dawn to sunset with an intention. And by this definition, we've highlighted numerous things. We've highlighted the timing of the fast, that it's from dawn to sunset. So if somebody fasts from sunset to dawn, it will not be considered an Islamically legal fast. It might be considered intermittent fasting because that's the trend nowadays, right? That you don't eat from 8 p.m. till 12 p.m. the next day, 16-hour fast, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. That's great. That's your practice. It's actually very effective as well. You could drop a bunch of weight if you did it, and you only eat between 12 and 8. But what we're speaking about here is the technical fast in Sharia. The technical fast in Sharia is from dawn till sunset. This is also very important to understand dawn and not sunrise. Sunrise is different. In Sharia, day starts from dawn, not from sunrise. There's a good hour and a half gap between the two. And dawn is defined as the brightness that appears in the horizon horizontally, not vertically, because it's preceded by a vertical type of brightness, which is known as the false dawn. We're speaking about the true dawn here. So the true dawn is the marking of the beginning of the fast, and the fast ends at sunset. And then intention is also important, because there could be mornings that you wake up and you haven't had anything to drink, you didn't have your coffee, you didn't have your breakfast, you went to work and you pass your day, it's lunchtime, and then you decide to go for your lunch. Or then you think to yourself, it's 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, well, I haven't eaten or drunk all day, can this be a fast? You didn't have an intention accompany it. And because you didn't have an intention accompanying it, it's not considered a legal, technical fast in Sharia. But I have to say this, because when we speak about niyyah, it's going to come up. When does a niyyah have to be made? So for optional fasts, you can make your niyyah up to midday of that particular day. So let's just say that an optional fast, we're not speaking about a make-up fast that you have to make up for a missed Ramadan fast, but just an optional fast. You woke up one morning, you prayed your Salatul Fajr, you never had anything to drink, you didn't eat anything, no coffee, nothing. Then at about 9 a.m. you think, you know what? It's a short day anyway. Maybe I'm just going to fast for today. Can you do that? You can. Up until mid-morning. What is mid-morning? In Sharia, mid-morning starts from, would be considered the middle point from dawn to sunset. That's also called Ad-Dahwatul Kubra, Nisfun Nahar Ash-Shar'i. So let's just say today dawn was what time? Anybody today? I think it was 5:59. And sunset is what time today? About 7:25. So between 5:51 and 7:25, what is the middle point? Exact middle. Work that out. That would be considered the middle time of the day according to Sharia. So for an optional fast, if you make your intention up until that point, you're good. And also for a Ramadan fast, we're going to speak about that. Anyway, what are the conditions that obligate fasting on an individual? Number one, they have to be a mukallaf. Mukallaf comes from the word taklif, which means to have legal responsibility. Legal responsibility in Sharia comes from Islam, being a Muslim, number one. Disbelievers are not required to fast. Number two, to be sane. A person who struggles with their sanity, they are not required to fast. And number three, puberty. A child is not required to fast, though we train our children and teach them to fast because it's a good thing to be in the habit, inshallah. But in terms of accountability, legally they are not accountable for not fasting. So we have to make that distinction. So Islam, sanity, and puberty. These are the three conditions that make a person responsible in Islam and legally accountable. Number two, the condition for fasting is intention, as I highlighted in the definition that I provided earlier. And number three, nothing that prevents the fast from becoming activated, such as menstrual cycle, because a woman in her menstrual cycle does not fast. She's not obligated to fast either. And even if she did fast, it would not be considered a fast in Islam, in Sharia. Right? So these are some of the, and also postnatal bleeding. When these three conditions are met, then a person can fast. The first condition we said after Islam and sanity and puberty was that a person must make the intention. So there are a few rulings connected to the intention. Intentions are important in our deen. Rasulullah ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are according to intentions. Whoever intends for Allah and His Messenger, his acts is for Allah and His Messenger. Whoever intends for dunya, then he will get whatever he aimed for from the dunya. That hadith is a very important hadith. An intention distinguishes one act of worship from another. If I'm standing, bowing, prostrating, but I have no intention, that's not salah. But if I stand and I recite some verses of the Quran and I bow and I supplicate in that and I prostrate and I supplicate in that with an intention and I begin with Allahu Akbar and I end with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, that becomes salah. If I'm just washing the limbs of my body and I'm not making an intention, I'm just washing. But if I'm making an intention, it becomes wudu. So intention distinguishes one act from another. If I'm just hungry and thirsty, I haven't had anything to eat or drink, that's just hunger and thirst. But if I had intention that hunger and thirst become a fast, then it becomes a fast. So intentions are very important to distinguish one act from another. Niyyah is the determination of the heart to do something. How do you technically define niyyah? Because one is to have a verbal formula that you pronounce, and that becomes your intention. And many of us are taught these formulas when we're young to perform salah. Oh Allah, I'm performing 2 rakah, fajr, farad, facing the qibla behind the imam. That's a verbal formula. But really and truly, intention is in the heart. So if you don't have that verbal formula, the intention is still there. It's present. But if you combine it with the intention of your tongue, it's better. Because now you have affirmation. So that's another thing to remember about intention. Persistency and consistency in the intention is a condition for its validity. If you're fasting and you begin your fast with an intention, that intention has to exist throughout the day. Otherwise, it's not considered a fast. It doesn't mean that you have to keep revisiting your intention, but it has to be a persistent intention. If one retracts the intention made at night before the pre-dawn meal, which is suhoor, then the fast will be invalid. So let's just say before I went to sleep at night, I had intention to fast the following day, but then when I woke up in the morning before Fajr time, before at the pre-dawn meal time, I didn't make an intention, or my intention was missing, or I retracted my intention, then my intention is no longer there. The act of waking up and eating suhoor suffices for intention because you don't usually do that. Right? Like when you're walking to the masjid, your walking to the masjid is intention in itself that you're going to pray salah, because it's not your usual route to walk to the masjid. Your usual route is to walk to work or to go to, not walk, nobody walks anyway, driving. Yeah, let's be clear about that as well. The fast of Ramadan will be valid as Ramadan. Even that's a very interesting one. Let's just say that it's Ramadan and I'm making the intention for another fast and not a Ramadan fast. Will it count for that fast or will it count for Ramadan? It's only going to count for Ramadan because the only fasts that are valid within Ramadan are Ramadan fasts. What if you say, well, I'm making up for last year's fast that I missed and it's this year's Ramadan? You can't do that either. It's only going to count for this present Ramadan at that time. Intention for Ramadan, an optional fast. Now, what is the timing for the intention? When do I have to make that intention? You can make it from the night before, and you can make it right up until midday. We explained this a few minutes ago. For Ramadan fasts and for optional fasts, you can make the intention up to midday. And midday is known as the middle point between dawn and sunset. That would be considered the middle day in Sharia. And in our example that we gave earlier, it was about 13 and a half hours. So 13 and a half divided by 2 is 6 hours and 45 minutes. So 6 hours and 45 minutes from 5:50 in the morning would be what, approximately? 12:20, 12:30, 12:35. So right up until 12:35 you can make that intention in our present timing. Okay? Remember that it would vary from season to season. If the intention was made before this time, it would still be considered valid as long as an invalidator of fasting does not occur. Right? Now it's just defining the day. What happens for a sister that's experiencing her menstrual cycle? Women in these two states are exempt from fasting because Allah does not burden individuals. Of course, these conditions make it difficult for a person to fast. Therefore, they are exempt from fasting. They will make up for the missed fast due to the above causes after Ramadan. Unlike Salah. Salah missed during the menstrual cycle will not be made up. But fasts that are missed during the menstrual cycle or during postnatal bleeding, they will be made up afterwards. If during fasting either of the two causes begin, then it invalidates the fast and will have to be made up. So let's just say one has already started the fast and then their period came in. It will break that fast that they are in and they will have to make up that particular day after Ramadan ends. If the two above states cease just before Fajr, she will fast that day and can delay her bath to partake suhoor. So let's just say like suhoor time right now ends at, currently suhoor time may end at 5, by today's calculation, about 5:48, for example. And her bleeding had ceased at 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. perhaps, just an example. And she only has enough time to take suhoor and not have her bath. Can she still fast? Yes, she can. Because there's only a very short time left for suhoor. She can have her suhoor and delay her bath till the subh, which is dawn, sets in. Okay. Fasting is not obligatory. So who else is fasting not obligatory? But who else is exempted? Fasting is not obligatory on a person whose body cannot tolerate fasting, either due to old age or because of a severe illness. Allah mentions this in Surah Al-Baqarah. وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. So what will they do instead? They will offer fidya. Severe illness can be of two types. Severe illness that is permanent and severe illness that is circumstantial. The person is severely sick in that particular moment for those particular days. If a person is severely sick for those particular days, they will not give fidya or ransom. They will make up for them when they regain their health after Ramadan is over. But for a person whose body cannot tolerate fasting because of a severe illness that is terminal, permanent, this person will give fidya instead. Fidya means a ransom or compensation, and that compensation would be a poor person's meal. And how much is that? In today's, you could say, market in our area, it's about $10 a day. If you're going to offer it in another country, then it will be cheaper perhaps, but you should give priority to your local neighborhood. But everybody will do based on their own abilities though. Some people, $10 a day will be a lot for them. $300 a month, that's a lot. For some people, if they find that in another country it's about $2 a day or $3 a day, then it might be a bit cheaper for them. So everybody will be do according to their circumstance. And somebody who can't afford that all, that's forgiven. Sharia does not burden us. Remember that. Allah says we intend ease on you and not hardship. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. So a person has terminal illness and they're also poor. They can't give fidya. What will they do? There's nothing they can do. They're not going to take a loan for it. Sharia is not going to enforce upon them to take a loan and burden themselves even more. They're already burdened, subhanallah. So this person is forgiven. They're in that condition. If a person would be harmed by fasting, that is, because of his fasting, his sickness would get worse or he would die, then fasting is actually prohibited for them. Because again, the injunctions of Allah are not meant to make our life difficult for us. So we have to be careful about this. We have to be, of course, there's a desire to fulfill Allah's commands as faithful believers of Allah. We have that desire to fulfill Allah, and also a fear that if I don't perform it, that I'm going to be punished, and so on and so forth. And it drives people to these extremities at times. But Sharia doesn't say that. Like, for example, the person who, in Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's time, I'm going to share this with you. There was a man, and he was fasting, and he was standing in the sun. And Rasul said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm standing in the sun," because he thought by standing in the sun, he's enduring more difficulties, and he's going to be rewarded more. But Sharia didn't tell him to do that. Now, if your job requires for you to be in the sun, that's a different matter. That's different. You're going to be rewarded way more than a person who's in their nice air-conditioned office, mashallah. Right? Of course, because Allah recognizes our challenges and our difficulties. If you're working in a grocery store and all day long you're having to pull those carts in and out, peak summertime and it's Ramadan and you're fasting, yes, you're going to be rewarded more, inshallah, than the person who's in a nice air-conditioned office or who's not working at all, mashallah, because he's got 10 houses on rent, alhamdulillah, bifadlillah, by Allah's grace and mercy, and he doesn't have to. Then, of course, it's all relative. If a person would be harmed, remember this, because even in Sharia, like if a person cannot make wudu, or the doctor said don't use water because it's going to increase your injury, and they decided, no, I'm going to make wudu, I'm not going to do tayammum, the dry ablution, because I want to be more pious, and they cause death to themselves, that's a problem. That's not a good thing. right? So we have to be careful. In the time of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, somebody had a head injury and the companions around him didn't understand the ruling properly and they forced him to use water and he died. And Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, you killed him. Why did you do that to him? So we have to understand that the rulings of Sharia have these, they're not there to burden us, inshallah. Well, let's move on. Fasting is not obligatory on the menstruation. We already mentioned this. And the woman who's experiencing postpartum bleeding, it is unlawful for them to fast. The woman who missed days of fasting during Ramadan for these reasons has to make up each missed day. Now, there are two situations. Does she make them up before the next Ramadan? Or does she have her entire life to make them up? Both opinions exist amongst the scholars. One of them has more flexibility, of course. She has the rest of her life. Because it could be that she might get pregnant again and have another child before the next Ramadan. Well, not necessarily. She might be pregnant during this Ramadan. Sorry, she might. There might be another reason for her to miss the next Ramadan. This Ramadan she missed because of bleeding, postpartum bleeding. Next Ramadan she was nursing. There could be multiple Ramadans come up in a row. It's difficult sometimes. And throughout that whole time period, she wasn't able to fast because she was nursing. And nursing is up to 2 years. And the doctor said, no, you can't deprive your body from food because your child needs that nutrition. It's gonna affect your milk. So then that continues that situation for 2-3 years sometimes. It can. That's why there's more flexibility in the opinion that she has the rest of her life to make it up. Exempted from fasting. The pregnant woman is allowed not to fast if she fears that harm would come to her or her baby from her fasting. My advice is to seek advice from a physician in these circumstances to determine that. As well, the breastfeeding woman is allowed not to fast if she fears harm would come to her or her baby from her fasting. Again, in these situations, I would advise not just to ask a physician, but to ask a Muslim physician. And the reason for that is because they're competent about the Islamic rulings. They know what Islam teaches. They understand the importance of fasting. So they're not just going to give you an answer based on what they think is appropriate. Rather, they're going to take into consideration what Sharia says as well, and then they'll give you their best judgment. Okay, so that's why it's important. A traveler, despite not having hardship. Who is a traveler in Sharia? Anybody who travels beyond 48 miles is considered a traveler. Now, some scholars would say that, well, if this is a regular daily route and there's no hardship in it, then they should still fast. So this is a different understanding, and we don't have the time to really explore this further because we want to cover a lot more content. But what is the mark to consider somebody a traveler? Is it the timing or the limits, how much they've traveled, or is it the strain involved in traveling? Right? So some scholars contemporary as well are saying that, like for example, we have cars nowadays, we don't travel on horseback or camels. So 48 miles is very, very short for some, it's a very short distance in a car. Very short distance in a car. And if I'm traveling 70 miles for work every day beyond my city limits, then there's not much strain involved in there because it's my daily route. Am I still exempt from fasting? Remember, the person who's a traveler still has to make them up later on in the year after Ramadan is over. So you have to make your best judgment. Right? You have to make your best judgment. But I would say that in that situation, if it's your daily route and you're traveling like that every day, it's not. You shouldn't make yourself exempt. You should fast. But if you're traveling and traveling is not part of your normal routine, then of course you have that dispensation from Sharia to not fast on that day and make up for it after Ramadan. Okay. A person may begin their fast whilst impure. That's another question that usually arises. Let's just say a person had been intimate with their spouse, or they had during the night time, or they had a wet dream and they woke up and there wasn't sufficient time and they had to have suhoor. What should they do? Can they start their fast? Yes, they can. And they will just have their bath after dawn, and that's fine, before they pray their Salatul Fajr. Okay. He can delay his ghusl till after Fajr time sets in. Okay. Now, what are the sunnah acts of fasting? And this is a very important point because Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam he took part in suhoor, the pre-dawn meal. It was important sunnah. So suhoor is very important. We should take it because it helps us in our fast. We'll be less cranky, less angry, less moody, right? So suhoor is important. Now, of course, it's also important not to have really unhealthy things in suhoor because it could also sit on our chest. But those are all nutritional issues. For the pre-dawn meal to be as close as possible to actual dawn. So that means that if you have to start your fast at 5:30 a.m., don't have your suhoor at 2 a.m., have it closer to 5:30 a.m. That is the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Another sunnah of fasting is iftar immediately after sunset. If you think that by delaying it another 10 minutes you're going to get more reward, that's against the sunnah. The sunnah is as soon as the sun sets, you break your fast. And of course, to break your fast with dates is sunnah. If dates are not available, then water. To make intention for the next day's fast before sleep is also a sunnah. Now, which acts are disliked during the fast? To taste something, even if spat out before entering the throat. Now, the question arises about toothpaste. This is a common question we usually get. Brother, you don't understand, I work for corporate America and I'm front-facing and I have to meet people and I don't want them to smell my breath. Khalas, we understand that. If that's the case, brush your teeth, just make sure nothing goes down your throat. That's all. Make sure try your best that the taste doesn't go down your throat either. But we always have a substitute, which is probably the sunnah, which is siwak. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam used the siwak. If you have a siwak, that should help. But just remember, technically, the smell that emanates from the stomach is beloved to Allah Ta'ala more than the smell of musk. But we understand that if you are front-facing and you're having to communicate at close contact with people at work, it is important that people don't become despised by Muslims and Muslim behavior and Muslim activity as well. So we understand that. That's fine. If you have to then brush your teeth, make sure, it's very hard sometimes, but make sure nothing goes down your throat, the taste doesn't go to your throat. To chew on something like plastic or a pen. Now, to chew on something, gum is different because the taste definitely goes to your throat. So you shouldn't chew gum during fast. But to chew on something else, like you're just doing your work and you're chewing on your pen, the lid of your pen, that's disliked during fasting. To delay taking bath of purity till after Fajr without a valid reason or cause. Remember we mentioned in the previous slide that if you woke up and there was only little time left and you had to eat, then you eat and delay your bath till after Fajr, that's okay. But without a valid reason, one shouldn't do that. To complain of hunger or thirst, we shouldn't do that. It takes away the essence of the fast. To deliberately take water up to the nostrils. Now, you can't play Allah, right? So sometimes we might have these little tricks to make ourselves feel a bit better about the fast when it's a hot day, to deliberately take water up to the nostrils during gargling or cleaning the nose, even in wudu. We should try to avoid that while we're fasting. To fight, quarrel, or argue, this is spiritual matter, right? These are not technically going to affect the fast from a technical perspective. Your fast is still valid if you fight with someone, argue with someone, but you're killing the essence of the fast. And that is the actual fast, the essence, right? There's a physical fiqh side of it, then there's a spiritual side of it, where your limbs are fasting, your eyes are fasting, your ears are fasting, your tongue is fasting. That's what we want to aim for, inshallah. To use indecent language, to lie, slander, backbite, or swear, these are unlawful anyway. I think there's a typo there. These are unlawful anyway. They're worse during fast. Right? Certain actions are reprehensible in Sharia anyway, but timing and place make them even more reprehensible. Like doing something in the haram would be more sinful, Mecca, right? Because it's an honorable place. You're violating the integrity and the sanctity of the haram of Mecca. Ramadan has sanctity attached to it. It's a sacred month. So doing something during the month of Ramadan that is sinful anyway will be more reprehensible during Ramadan. To unnecessarily put oneself through extraneous work that could lead to weakness, thirst, or hunger. If it's part of your occupation, your job, that's a different matter, of course. And like I said, Allah rewards us accordingly. But to unnecessarily put yourself through, something can wait till after Ramadan, do it after Ramadan. If it can wait till after Iftar, after we break our fast in the evening, wait. It's probably better to. Now, what invalidates the fast? What breaks our fast? There are two terms that we need to remember here. One is qada, one is kafara. Qada means to make up. Kafara means expiation and penalty. Right? Qada and kafara, two different terms. So making up one fast in exchange of another or in place of another is called qada. Paying a penalty where you have to make up more than one for one missed fast or give compensation in other ways, that's called kafara. To remember, to understand this better, qada is, let's just say for example, for a valid reason I did not fast because I was traveling or I was sick. When Ramadan ends, I will make up that fast, that's called qada. Let's say that I broke my fast without a valid reason. I just couldn't handle it. I just couldn't be bothered anymore and I just ate something. Not only will that necessitate qada and a make-up fast, but I also have to pay a penalty which is known as kafara. And the kafara could be 60 days of consecutive fasting based on the verse of Dhihar in Surah Al-Mujadalah. And if I can't fast 60 days consecutively, then I will feed 60 poor people, or I would feed one person for 60 days continuous. So either of these three levels. Now what necessitates qada and kafara? First, to remember at the most basic level that kafara, the penalty, only applies to Ramadan fasts. So if it was a non-Ramadan fast and you broke it without a valid reason, you only have to make up one in exchange of it, but there's no kafara for that. Because the penalty is due to the sanctity of Ramadan. You broke a Ramadan fast without a valid reason, that was bad of you. Now you pay a penalty as well. Okay, you get the logic behind it, yeah? Right, it's very simple, inshallah. Now, so I've explained these in this slide. Kafara literally means expiation in Sharia. It's a particular act, whether emancipating a slave, which is not even relevant in this day and age, fasting a prescribed number of days, or feeding a prescribed number of poor people with the intention of expiation. It is a penalty in terms of its obligation, but an act of worship in terms of fulfillment. Remember this at a very basic level. It seems like a penalty, but when you do it, it's a worship as well, inshallah. So kafara is only applicable to broken or missed Ramadan fasts. The kafara for Ramadan fast is the same as that for dhihar. Dhihar is a divorce condition that has been mentioned in Surah Al-Mujadalah. No time to go into detail about that. If a woman is doing kafara, where she has to make up 60 consecutive days, then, and her menstrual cycle begins in between, it breaks up the successive nature of the fast. What should she do? She just continue when her menstrual cycle is over, right? So she fasts 28 days, for example, consecutively, kafara, and then her menstrual cycle came in for 5 days. Once her menstrual cycle is over, then she begins once more and does the rest of the 32. If a woman is doing kafara and okay, I mentioned that here, one kafara is sufficient. Now, that's another question. How about if I have multiple broken fasts that I broke without a valid reason that necessitate kafara? And now I realize I'm making tawbah to Allah and I'm at that point in my life where I want to make up, I want to make amends. Do I have to fast 60 consecutive days for each of those days that I messed up? Or is one going to be sufficient? Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi says one is sufficient. Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi says one kafara for each of those. You could be making kafara for the rest of your life then. Let's just say that you lived in, like you were sinful for about 10 years, 20 years of your life, and all those 30 days of Ramadan, you deliberately didn't fast, even though you were meant to fast, or you didn't really care about your fast and you broke it. Like you fasted, but then like when you went out for lunch with your workmates and your work friends, your colleagues, and you just ate, or you just smoked a cigarette, you didn't care, and you were very, very unmindful or nonchalant about it, then you're making 60 for each of those days. You could be fasting for the rest of your life. Technically, that makes sense because you're making up for each violation, but it would be very, very difficult for a person to do that for the rest of their life. Therefore, this opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi provides more flexibility in the issue, that one kafara, inshallah, should suffice for all of them. And then from here on, you don't do that again. Make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, we're going to go into some more details here. there are things that invalidate the fast that only make qada necessary, and there are certain things that invalidate the fast that make qada and kafara necessary. What are those? Things that make qada and kafara necessary is when a fasting person eats, drinks, or has sexual intercourse in the following circumstances: intentionally, without coercion or force, without any compulsion, fear of death or illness. If a person is fearing death or fearing illness because they just can't take the fast anymore because it's just become very, very difficult for them, they tried, and there's a valid reason for them that they're getting headaches, there's a migraine, everybody has to be their own judge. At that situation, you have to ask yourself. Now, if you come running to the scholar and say, he's going to ask you the same question: do you really need to eat? If you really need to eat, do it and make up for it after Ramadan. That's you're not doing it without a valid reason. But I'm not opening the doors and saying that we should do this every day. I'm saying that there can be a time where it's just, you're struggling with, you started the day off fine, but then you have a really pounding headache. You just can't tolerate it. If it's a mild one and you can get by, that's different. You know yourself better than everybody else does. But if you're having a really, really bad migraine, very bad headache, and you need to take some pills, some painkillers, because you're just suffering, you can't function properly, you're not working properly, then break the fast and make up for it after Ramadan. But you have to make that decision for yourself. Istafti qalbak, ask your qalb and your heart, and then you make that decision based on your discretion, inshallah. So for kafara to be necessary, it has to be without a valid reason. Like a person just had intercourse with they just slept with their wife while they're fasting. There was no reason for that. They didn't have to. You can't say, I couldn't control myself. No. That doesn't apply there. Everybody has that much self-restraint that, I'm fasting, I'll avoid it, and later on. It happened with one companion, by the way. Humans are humans, right? One companion came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, Rasulullah, I was intimate with my wife and I was fasting. What do I do? He said, fast 60 consecutive days. Oh Rasulullah, I could even do one. You think I could do 60? He said this to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah said, okay, well, feed 60 people. He goes, oh Rasulullah, there's nobody more poor than me in Medina. Rasulullah said, there's nothing that you can do then. It's khalas, it's done. It's all right, make tawbah. That was his condition. But technically, this would be the ruling. If you did something like that without a valid reason, you fast 60 consecutive days. If you can't fast 60 consecutive days, you feed 60 people. If not 60 people, one person, 60 days, you feed them for. And if you don't have the ability to do that, then you make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, there's another issue here. What things make qada, what are those things that make qada and kafara necessary? I mentioned here food, drink, and intimate relations with your spouse, with one spouse. Some of the ulama say that it's only this third one that necessitates kafara, and for the other two, there's only tawbah. So there are different opinions in this regard. I just want to make that clear because you might hear different things or read different things. So you have to understand that there are different opinions amongst the fuqaha. Now this is the safest one, of course. Okay. What things invalidate the fast but only necessitate qada and not kafara? Vomiting intentionally. It can happen that sometimes you might be unwell and you've eaten something and it didn't sit well and you had to vomit. Okay, fine, you vomit intentionally, but you'll make up for it after Ramadan because you did that. If someone breaks their fast due to a legitimate reason such as traveling or sickness, then that will only necessitate a make-up fast and not kafara. If a woman starts her menstrual cycle during the fast, so she was fasting but her period started, then her fast is broken as a result, she'll make up for that one day. It doesn't necessitate kafara. It is undesirable for a person to indulge in any physical contact with one's spouse during fasting if it could lead to intercourse or ejaculation discharge. Remember, there's two companions. One of them came to Rasulullah and said, Rasulullah, can I kiss my wife while I'm fasting? He said, yes. Another one came and said, Rasulullah, can I kiss my wife while I'm fasting? He said, no. You might be thinking, what's the difference? The one who Rasulullah said yes to was an older man. He can control himself. The younger man, Rasulullah said no. Because the younger man might not have that restraint, because that one kiss might lead to another thing. So the Rasul says, no, you don't. Okay, so things that do not invalidate the fast, to eat or drink something unintentionally. You had no intention. It happens the first day of Ramadan usually, because you're in such a habit of waking up in the morning and having a sip of water. It happens. First day of Ramadan. And then you remember 2 minutes later, oh my God, I'm fasting. What am I doing? That is nisyan. Nisyan means forgetfulness. And for forgetfulness, no sin, fast is not broken. That's Allah's blessing. You had that sip of water, that was Allah's blessing, right? Whatever enters the body through the pores of the skin, such as water, cream, oil, medicinal cream, does not break the fast. Whatever enters the body unintended, such as dust, smoke, insect entering the mouth, we had no choice. We were walking, it was dusty outside, there were some construction workers working, and dust entered the mouth. You're in a country, there's a lot of dust, and it enters and goes down the throat. It wasn't by choice. It's not like cigarettes where you're inhaling that smoke by choice. It's different. Water entering the ears doesn't break the fast because it doesn't reach the digestive system. The ears are not connected to the digestive system. The mouth is connected to the digestive system. The back passage is connected to your intestines. So anything that goes up there, you went for a test, you went for a medical exam, that would break the fast. The front of the woman, that would not break the fast because it's not connected to the digestive tract. Some of the fuqaha earlier on in the classical times considered it to be, but medically we understand today that it's not connected. So it will not break the fast. Okay, we're going to go through some of these inshallah in a few minutes. An injection does not break the fast unless the insulin is given right in the stomach, directly into the stomach. That's a different matter, but otherwise insulin doesn't break fast, right? Saliva does not break, swallowing one's own saliva does not break fast. Drawing blood does not break the fast. Cupping does not break the fast, although according to some scholars it does because of a hadith. And what we understand from that hadith, other scholars, fuqaha and jurists understood from that hadith was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam discouraging it because it could cause weakness. If you do cupping while you're fasting and you're drawing all that blood out, it could cause weakness. Surma or antimony, which is a type of, it's not mascara really, but it's a type of powder that people apply to their eyes and it strengthens the eyesight. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam also used to use that. Iktahala, the word in Arabic is kuhl. This is valid while you're fasting, so it means eye drops are also valid while you're fasting. Ear drops are also valid while you're fasting. Taking a bath to stay cool, no problem as long as you don't swallow water. To vomit unintentionally does not break the fast. Applying perfume does not break the fast. Siwak does not break the fast. A wet dream does not break the fast. Asthma inhalers, ear drops, eye drops, or treatments of wounds do not invalidate the fast. Now, this asthma inhaler one, there's a difference of opinion. There's a difference of opinion. The majority that I've, from my personal research in this matter, the different bodies of ulama I've seen, there are certain scholars that are quite cautious about this matter, and they say that an asthma inhaler would break the fast. But many ulama say it would not break the fast. And from my personal research, speaking to a lot of physicians and doctors and pulmonologists as well, I don't think it breaks the fast. That's my personal opinion. Feel free to disagree. You might have heard something from other scholars and you believe and you accept that ruling. Khalas, that's up to you, no problem. Personally, I feel that asthma inhalers do not break the fast. Okay, so there's a criterion that I wanted to, I can't really share it on the screen, but I'm going to just mention that. Just a few principles to understand these medical procedures and these conditions, right? So classically, the scholars mention the ear as being an invalidating entry point. So classically, the ulama used to say, before we understood medicine a bit better, scholars used to say that anything that enters the ear would also invalidate the fast because they considered the ear to be connected to the throat back in those times. But we learn medically from in this day and age that there's no connection between the ears and the throat, so eardrops will not invalidate the fast. So modern day medicine negates any such connection unless there is a hole in the eardrum, right? Modern day medicine establishes a connection between the eye and the nose, thereby it should follow that the eye is an invalidating. So generally speaking, that the eye and the nose has a connection. So therefore, anything entering the eye should have broken the fast. But there's a special consideration given to the eye, because Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself applied kuhul during his fast, and he did not break the fast, right? So likewise, the ulama based on that say that eye drops will not break the fast. What matters in relation to the back passage is that the substance reaches about a finger length into the back passage. If that much is inserted into the back passage, then it will break the fast. Any chance of that happening is rare, unless of course you go for a medical procedure and you're asking, you have to go for an exam, and they insert something into your back passage, then that would invalidate the fast. Classically, the scholars mention the front area of the woman to be an invalidating entry point as well. This is because they considered that passage to be connected with the digestive system historically, but modern day medicine negates this. Classically, scholars mention a deep head injury as being an invalidating entry point because they considered the brain to be connected with the throat. However, modern day medicine negates this unless the basal skull is fractured. So these are also considerations. An injury is not exhaustive in the two mentioned examples. What matters in relation to an injury is whether or not it is connected to the digestive system. Okay. Then there's a whole list of like medical procedures. So I'm going to go list them one by one, and then I'm going to open up for questions. Only about 5 minutes we'll have for questions, unfortunately, because it's salah time. So entry point, if it's the mouth, breaks the throat, breaks the fast. There's no disagreement in that matter, because that's connected to the throat and to the digestive system. The mouth is directly connected to the throat. Nose, anything that goes through the nose also and reaches the throat, that will also break the fast. Ears, no. Eyes, no. Back passage, yes. A female's front passage, no. Urinal passage, no. Deep head injury, no. Deep abdominal injury, yes, because it's directly connected to the digestive system. The pores of the body, that will not, anything that enters through the pores of the body into the body will not break the fast. Okay. Acupuncture, no, will not break the fast. Asthma pump, I already mentioned to you guys, 2 different opinions. Contact lenses doesn't break the fast. Creams and lotions don't break the fast. Deodorant doesn't break the fast. Eardrops does not break the fast. Endoscopy does not. Actually, endoscopy does break the fast because it entails the use of a solution sprayed into the throat. Right, so if a person goes for an endoscopy, that will break the fast. Extracting blood will not break the fast. Eye drops doesn't. Injections don't. Intravenous drips do not. Lighting incense in the house, that does not break the fast. Lip balm does not break the fast unless you taste it and that taste goes into your throat. That's a different matter. Makeup does not break the fast. Mouthwash depends. Does it go down your throat or are you just spitting it out? You shouldn't let the taste go to your throat. Nasal spray, yes, it will break the fast. Patches, no. Pills and tablets, yes, because they're going through your throat. Smelling food does not break your fast. Smelling perfume doesn't break your fast. Smoking does, because smoking entails that fumes enter the body from the mouth, which is an invalidating entry point, and you're doing that by choice. Suppository, if it's suppositories from the back passage, yes, it enters the digestive system from the back passage. It's an invalidating entry point. Toothpaste, again, we had that discussion earlier, depends. And vaginal examination does not break the fast. So I'm going to end here, guys. If you have any questions, does anybody have any questions? Yes. Missing a fast without a valid reason? Good question. So the brother asked, if you missed a fast without a valid reason, you just didn't keep it, does that necessitate qada only or kafara and qada? So according to some of the scholars, it necessitates both qada and kafara. Some of them will say that you're sinful and you make tawbah. Yeah. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, you also said Sahur is attached with the fasting day.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm not going to eat Sahur,
Mm-hmm.
you might miss it a few times,
Yeah.
but you plan to fast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to say something verbally?
So the brother asked the question for those who are listening online. that if you miss your suhoor, does that still count as a fast? Because suhoor itself is like an intention. It does still count. As long as your intention was there the night before, or when you wake up in the morning, you intend to fast up until mid-morning, you still have that timing to make the intention, then it'll still count as a Ramadan fast, inshallah. Yeah. Any other questions? Any sisters have any questions before I'm going to ask? The brother has his hand up. If there's any, no? Okay, so, yes, brother. No. Injections do not... No, because it doesn't go, as long as it doesn't go to the digestive system directly, it will not break the fast. Yeah. So like insulin shots, if somebody is diabetic, it will not break the fast, but if it's directly into the stomach, then that would break the fast. Any other questions, guys? Because it's going to be adhan time soon.